Xiao Ru cursed his luck, cursed the very heavens and the fates as he ran with all he had. His feet were sore, and cuts and scrapes lined his ankles. He'd been a fool. He'd been such a fool to think that just because this winter things had been calmer that it'd be different. He stumbled, almost falling, and his heart leapt into his throat. He could hear it now, hear the creature chasing him through the foliage. His heart thundered so hard he thought it'd shatter his chest and kill him just from that. He'd prefer that, too. A rumbling growl came from behind him, and Xiao Ru's body stiffened. He could feel the creature behind him, feel its vile presence, the sickening aura of death that lingered around it. He ran harder than ever. He'd heard of the seventh peak, heard tales of a new lord and elder at the sect, that he was giving protection to everyone, that the man could do miracles, a five-fold sage, a child who was as strong as Lord Zhou. He didn't believe such nonsense. But now, Xiao Ru's feet carried him toward that direction as he cursed himself for not thinking. Even if false, at least in the city he could have been safe. Sure, he may have died on the streets from starvation, but compared to being torn apart and eaten by that thing, even that seemed better. He knew how things were. Every winter the demons came, and every winter the sect would strengthen its protections, if you paid their stupid demands to satisfy the cultivators. And even then, sooner or later those would fail, and you'd be forced to flee to the city and scrape by until winter passed, trying not to starve in the crowded streets. He'd lost more people than he could count to winter. So many that, long ago, Xiao Ru had known somewhere in his heart that his own fate would be a similar cold embrace of death somewhere on some street. It was his foolish arrogance and defiance to such a tragic fate that had led him to refuse. The past 4 or 5 years, he'd built his defenses to fend off any beasts and survive through the winter in his village. At first, he'd been mocked. But when the villagers returned, starved and exhausted, and saw him still living, they'd changed their tune quickly. Soon, more and more people had managed to survive on their own. They'd dug holes and made simple spears and traps for the mindless beasts and stayed inside of their homes, which they'd also fortified. It had worked. It had worked. Xiao Ru had become a hero for the villagers.